So I propose to start. We have more or less about 1 hour, an hour and a bit. Shortly to introduce the second session, it is, we call it art education in the context of economic, social, political transformations. And this is a second attempt. Last year we had a roundtable with a wider focus on what is going on in the art education in Moldova, in Hungary, and in other places, with guests from those areas, discussing how come the society after these radical transformations in the 90s, most of the fields of society went through more or less a transition and arrived to the point when they different field sort of evolved. How come the artistic education field remained stuck, and the methodologies, and the spaces, the tools we use didn't evolve that much during the last 30 years. And this year, it's a good opportunity to talk not in general, but kind of more focused, and to see what is going on in the field of writing and teaching about art history, and how this field and how we ourselves we activate in this field, and also how if this field how much is it related actually to the ongoing societal transformation, if there is a link, or if these are sort of two parallel societies, the art history, teaching art history, and researching art history in Moldova, maybe in Romania, and also what we heard today from Jorg Scheller in Zurich. So the panel is mainly dedicated to how do we write and how do we teach local art histories, or about local art histories today. And we invited to the panel several guests. I will start with Tatiana Rășchitor, who is a teacher of history of art at the Academy of Music, Theatre and Fine Arts in Chișinău. Our second guest is Lilia Dragneva, who is a researcher and also teacher of history of art in the College of Art Alexandru Plămădeală, and Cristina Moraru, who is assistant professor and researcher and teacher of history of art in Iași Art University, Ioan Cuza, right? No, sorry. So it's
Jorg
University in Iași, sorry.
Okay.
And also Jorg Scheller, who is himself a researcher and art history professor in Zurich Art University. We also have as a guest Bermet Borovaeva. In fact, now I realize that you probably met with each other in 2017.
Yeah, I remember the concert for sure.
Yeah, that's what we were mentioning in the very beginning of the previous session. Most of us know Jorg as a musician. So Bermet is, if you are willing to join and also introduce the context of Bishkek and Kyrgyzstan, and the invitation is to answer on, as a starting point, to answer on one basic question: what kind of opportunities do we see in the field of researching or teaching art history today in our local context? But also, what kind of obstacles do we encounter on the way? So I would leave it open, and any one of you who would like to start can do it. Thank you. Who would like to start?
Okay, I can start by thinking on the challenges that we encounter in our current educational system, because I think one of the main important challenge that arises from in this system arises from our current pandemic situation. I believe we cannot talk about art education in the context of political, economical, and social transformation without referring to this crisis and its effect on education. We are now for the second time confined in our houses. Our educational system has moved even closer to the entertainment industry than the capitalist system managed to push it so far. This shift towards tele-education happened drastically and even more efficiently during the regime of coronavirus than under the changes imposed by the neoliberal educational system that envisioned students as consumers and teachers as service providers. Students are now digital consumers. They are more or less equipped with books, since they do not have access to university libraries except digital libraries. But it's a good thing they are equipped with credit cards, so they can pay their tuition online and sign in their classes on their cell phone. But cell phones and credit cards were already considered surveillance tool, and now it becomes even more problematic when we establish a correlation between those surveillance devices and the institution of education. So it seems to me that we should rethink our relations with the university as an institution. And here I have to mention Michel Foucault, because he envisions schools as traditional institution of social confinement and normalization. But now in this period of economic confinement, schools are opening a domestic space. And this domestic space becomes a new center for production, consumption, and political control. So let's think of how we teach now on different online platforms, because I think this is a relevant problematic on questioning how we work with images in art institution and how this new educational paradigm favors the circulation of images. We live in accelerated times, and this compulsive dynamism of our contemporaneity is reflected on the way we approach images. There are sustainable educational reasons contributing to this dynamism of image circulation, and we can maybe easily present to our students in our online lectures any work of art from any museum, but this dynamism of image circulation hindered the quality of the image in favor of its accessibility. So Hito Steyer, in her text, maybe you read it on eFlux, it is in defense of the core image. She's talking about these images that are circulating as viewing copies of the artworks, following the rules established by our current audiovisual capitalism. And so in our educational system, these images are receiving now a special status. They are distributed only for educational purposes. They become theoretical objects, different in their nature from the contemplation objects they once used to be. So nowadays, students are presenting their works of art online, and the image that circulates through different vehicles is just a reminder of the former visual safes of the actual work of art, since it doesn't have enough materiality to be considered an object of contemplation. So as opposed to previous times when art students needed to circulate in order to have access to a work of art by going to a gallery or a museum, now the work of art circulates and is available to our students through this infinite reproduction and dissemination. However, in higher education, we work with this low quality image, and maybe this can be read positively as Jorg Scheller tried, because she's telling that these low quality images are actually a description of our contemporary art culture and society. But what I wanted to also consider our spaces of education and how they change during this pandemic period. Because in Romania, higher education had the liberty of choosing how the academic year will be configured. We started the academic year in a mixed scenario in which we could alternate between our physical presence at the university and our activity online. Since I'm teaching at art history department, in my department we have only online encounters with our students, where it seems as we are no longer teachers but teleproducers, while students are hiding behind an array of cybernetic processes that work like digital masks. So when we teach now, we see cropped portraits of our students, or just their name or their initial, or an image depicting on how they decided to technically mediate their presence on Zoom or Google Meet or Microsoft Teams. So I also wanted to have a look at the alternative. In a scenario in which we are not confined in this tele-republic of our home, as philosopher Paul Preciado called it, what happened to education when a physical presence is allowed in these pandemic times? Because we see how spaces of education, classrooms, students' gallery, libraries, become spaces of sanitation, reaching a degree of sanitation that surpasses even the aseptization of the white cube. We now have protocols and politics of sanitation that regulate the student's body. And if we have learned anything from Foucault, we now know that the living body is the central object of all politics. So students are being interpellated. They need to prove they are healthy by having their temperature checked. And this opens an interesting discussion about community and immunity. And I will mention here the Italian philosopher Robert Esposito, because he links these two notions, the notion of the political notion of community and the biomedical notion of immunity, given that those two terms have the same common root, this Latin munus, which means a duty or a gift, a tribute, a tax that someone needs to pay in order to be part of the community. However, in Roman law, immunity was a privilege that releases somebody from the obligation shared by all. So being immunized means being exempted, while being deimmunized means being denied of all community privilege. And the reason I'm introducing Esposito here and this analogy between community and immunity is precisely to respond to this question related to the challenges and the opportunities we now have in the educational system under the influence of these political and social changes. Because I think that the change and the opportunity comes from the same context. Even if in this pandemic crisis, we raised all these challenges in the educational system related to the medium of education or to the politics of sanitizing educational spaces, the opportunity comes also from the virus, as Preciado was telling us, to learn from the virus. And maybe this is a time to realize the mistakes we made so far. And in this analogy between community and immunity, maybe we can understand that even if isolation helped us survive so far, we need co-belonging and solidarity in order to end this crisis. So in fact, I should refer here to Jean-Luc Nancy, for whom the virus should have been called communovirus and not coronavirus, since it's come from communism with the intention to commonize us and destitute the capitalist system, rather than derisory corona that evoke monarchical times. So we should ask ourselves, in these post-political times, are we able to think of a community, or is it something to be feared of as the virus? Can we rely on contemporary art to establish a community, or is it art nowadays as global or as ruthless as the virus? Those are the questions that I wanted to bring into discussion today in relation to the challenges and the opportunities that we have in the educational system nowadays. If you have any questions. Or let's...
I would propose that everyone positions, explains or says something from his her own perspective, and then we open a discussion based on the keywords that you propose.
Okay.
Who would like to be next?
I mean, as for me, I talked for a long time already, kind of like outlining my understanding of teaching, researching already. When it comes, so just like briefly, maybe also to connect to what Cristina just said, when it comes to the corona virus and the pandemic and the local and teaching methods, it is interesting to observe that at the moment, isolation is precisely defined as solidarity. So this is what is all over the place. When you isolate, when you like decommunize, then you solidarize. So we have a complete shift in understanding. Like the term solidarity usually evokes associations such as like masses gathering in public spaces, no? Protests, rallies, Solidarność movement in Poland, etc. So this crisis triggers a completely new, say like an image policy or a realm of image revolving around notions such as locality and solidarity. because what it produces is actually the opposite of what Piotr Podrowski and many others have tried to do, namely to relocalize art history and to relocalize discourses. So, Cristina, what you just pointed out with regard to Hito Steyer and the poor image, that is consists more or less only of circulation value. It has no intrinsic value in itself, but it is just defined as something that circulates between nodes and shifts and transforms, becomes worse and worse and worse in a way. So this is something that runs counter to all these attempts that also like Oberlicht is doing in Chisinau, namely to really get a grip on the local specificities of practices, of theories, of experiences, of discourses. So now very abruptly we have entered this like sanitary realm of the virus, where everything is now detached again. So we're at home, we're sitting here, we're staring at these laptops, at the screens, which are like a standardized product. We can talk about specific stuff, but we do it through a global medium that is pretty much the same all over the place. I was thinking of Jodie Dean when Cristina was talking, who speaks of communicative capitalism, and she speaks of the internet as a zero institution. So as an institution that has no intrinsic value or specificity, but that kind of like transcends this a lot. So I think at the moment the challenge is really to think of ways how to stay connected to these local issues, to the specific local issues in and through the pandemic, because it is very tempting now. When I prepare classes, I always feel tempted to say, okay, I can take something from Taiwan, I can take something from Hong Kong, I take something, let's check what kind of museums do we have in Zimbabwe? The Harare Museum. That's an interesting image. I take this. Yeah? And that is tempting. It feels very good because it feels like trans and open and not confined to these local boundaries. But we're completely agree, we're losing something at the moment, and nobody really knows where we're headed at. Because I think that's a problem with regard to the crisis. There is no plan. There is no long-term perspective. If we all knew that this would only last like half a year, then it would be a funny and a great experiment to do this online lecturing and see what it can do and what it cannot do. But since nobody knows what this crisis actually means, and if the measures that are taken now will be prolonged, maybe like 1 year or 2 years or whatever happens, there I see a great problem, and this is precisely losing touch with the specificities of the local, with the physical experience, which can be to some extent compensated through like, for instance, bodily gestures when online teaching and online learning. That is something that I realized you have to put a lot more like bodily energy in your performance when online lecturing in order to compensate for this abstraction that goes along with Zoom. So in a strange dialectical way, Zoom lecturing amplifies the bodily dimension and maybe creates a new longing for the physical and the bodily. So that is something that I find quite interesting, like this dialectics. But still, like this dialectic thing is quite inspiring, and it can be energizing if you know that this state will end in a couple of months. Then you will be happy experimenting. But if not, then it will really feel like a very depressing form of compensation. So maybe this just from my side.
maybe before someone else would like to express her own position. Lilia, okay.
Yeah, I will say a bit about this situation on which all of us we are. Later on, I would like that we would focus more maybe on our context, and our possibilities, and our realities. I wouldn't put too much attention to this pandemic situation. It just started, and it's hard to give some appreciation to that. So we are just trying now to go through some challenges. For instance, I'm teaching art history and as well the art management. The management in art is online, and the art history is offline. So we have this contact, which is very important because after the classes online, I realized that I have a lot of parasite expressions. Even I'm talking offline with somebody, I'm always asking, do you understand me? Do you hear me? So it's something which coming from this bad things from this situation. Also, this online format, so I'm trying somehow to define my private zone. Even now I'm talking from my work space, so somehow I don't want this public space to come into through this window into my house, into my private zone. Also, when I'm teaching online with my students in the art college as well, I'm going to the art college and I'm teaching from there. I don't know how it will be in the future. Maybe I'll stay at home. And I'm not asking students to turn on the camera. So if they want, they can, but also if it is not convenient for me, but in the same time, I don't want to come into their house somehow, into their private zone. Yeah, so with offline classes on art history, of course, is much more complicated because of this restrictions. We cannot take the paper. I cannot move because always we had these classes quite active. Always students came into my place and they made the presentations. At this moment, we're doing everything, keeping this distance, social distance. What we're doing now, I proposed them to focus more on the research. So they are doing these presentations. They are doing the presentations for the colleagues, but these presentations are not the topic what we studied before, but there's research, of course, concerning this topic, but on a different topic they are choosing. Yeah, so that was my remark, and maybe later on we'll talk more about the specific context of these peripheric zones and how we deal with contemporary art and in general the teaching system we have here.
Thank you, Lilia. Tatiana, would you like to join with your experience last half year? Okay. How was it for you?
Unfortunately, it's the same. Same bad experience, especially with the first year when they come. About 20 teenager, which I have no idea which is the name, which is the face, because the face was covered. And now we have all the courses online, and it's very difficult to work with them because I didn't communicate previously with these people. And yes, like Lilia mentioned before, it's very difficult and like Jorg also to speak, present something, and you have this feeling this is happening all with your laptop, and you have no connection feedback. Yeah, so I miss feedback. I miss people. And it's tragic. If we try to compare, because I think about the opportunity, and because York is here, I try to revise what's happened in Zurich University about art courses, about bachelor degree program and theory modules. So I find actually this modules turn, and I was intended to ask about this methodology, how you apply to this specific module, but we have no time to this. And okay. And for example, in my academy, every thing is based on practical and technological modules. So we have few theoretical modules, and art history is one of them. So I try to explain during 4 years, because you have 180, but we have it's opportunity 230 credits, so we have much more credits. So in art history, I teach from first year to the last year, and we have in the program classical chronological historical review from prehistory to 20th century. And 20th century, we have just 2 credits. So you have 3 credits on turn. Me just 2. And it's interesting because the same things happened to philosophy and sociology during our program. So they study philosophy, the students study philosophy till Kant and Nietzsche. And when I start to explain the postmodernist, pop art, and so on, I miss this information. So they couldn't understand, because at philosophy they have just 4 credits from Platon to Kant and Nietzsche, and they have no idea about philosophy. And I check on Zurich University, you have the modules of philosophy of 21st century. I think, oh my God, so fantastic. We need 20th century mandatory. And I know perhaps comparing to your methods, our methods is more classical, so it's vertical, because it's more like talking, presentations, essay presentations, seminars. So it's we miss this interactivity, different maybe new teaching methods, and we miss here some kind of courses for teachers from university, yeah, high courses. Because for example, the teachers from school, ordinary undergraduate school, or maybe college, but I don't know, from school, they have a lot of mm, qualifications, how to say it, courses which have the aim to empower the knowledge and methods of teaching and so on, and new practice in this theory and fields. But at our university, and I notice in the majority of university in our country, we miss this opportunity from teacher from university to enrich and empower the level of teaching and knowledge. So everything we do, we just do by ourselves, by myself. I'm happy to participate on when I have the time to all this opportunity which provide Oberlicht or who else. So it's not so many opportunity, and this is for me the biggest problem, because I in this issue, I was in isolation. So I don't need coronavirus to be in isolation. This issue, I was in isolation because previously, what I remember, because I studied Academy of Art, my teachers didn't explained us the art of 20th century, because they think it's ugly, it's not classical, traditional, they have no value, and so on.
It's true.
Yeah. Even I find mm, some very interesting subject to the other faculty, but okay, it's long. So, and for example, about local history. Local means East Europe, something like this. So, Romanian arts, national arts, how to say, and Russian arts, because we had a lot of links with Russian arts. I didn't study it at university, and now I'm trying to make this with my students. So try to teach them art of 20th century and Russian art and national art in this short period of this short program. Yeah. And of course, we have a problem with documentations. Yes, because if you know, the majority of books is published in London, United States. So if we find some interesting pieces, all of them are in English. And English is a language of contemporary art, and I try to repeat to my students: learn English, learn English, learn English, learn English. And it's also one of the difficulties. Lessons. Come on, maybe you say them learn German, but okay. The courses was in German too. So that's it. And I unfortunately thought that from previous round table, yeah, which happened in 2019, nothing changed. So the situation is the same. And what topic, that topic which mentioned Cristina about all that structuralism and so on, a link with art theory and art history. At our university, they start the students to understand and study all this only at master degree, at master level. So, and I don't know. I think that they are ready, and we prepare them for living in 20th century, not in 21st century. This is a sad reality, and of course we have no this art infrastructure. Maybe the gallery place, something, public artist place, gallery, or I don't know, just one museum, but not a museum of contemporary art. I don't know. So that is questions about For me, yes, it's interesting. What about the book, the sources, which which um, ah, which scholar we need to read, to study from art of 21st century, if we try at least to do this at once. What is about 21st century? Because we talk about it, but for me it's like, what, 21st century? It's too early to study it. That's it. Thank you.
If I can say something. So I would like to invite Tatiana and maybe students who are open even during the coronavirus. I'm talking about the Center for Contemporary Art, which I'm running already for 20 years, and we have a huge library here. And here you can find books in Russian, in Romanian, which includes the art and theory of 21st century as well. And in general, I would invite the students to CSAC and to follow what we are also proposing to them. And this was the reason also why I started to teach, because at a certain moment running CSAC, I realized that somehow I'm losing all the artists. They are leaving the country, they're immigrating, and at a certain moment I realized that I have no more artists to work with. And then I did with my colleague, we prepared an MA program on art theory, criticism, and curatorial practices. We didn't found we wasn't supported because it was a huge project, an ambitious one. And then I decided not to wait, but to go to teach. And I chose the art college because I thought it's a very good age to catch the young talented artists. It's between 16 and 20 years old. And I had this opportunity because maybe we don't have such a restriction as in a high education, as Tatiana mentioned it with credits. So I changed the curricula, and now we're studying till 21st century. I'm teaching from the changing of aesthetics from Romanticism period and till 21st century. And concerning the methods to teach, coming from independent sector, I tried to use different knowledge from trainings, workshops. For instance, I followed some workshops on training for trainers and so on. So somehow to bring some methodology from another sector. That because I say that now it's a bit complicated and I'm coming into a more classical way of teaching, because normally we always moved and it was quite vital work. And also in the last year, when we don't have art history, we have art management. We are trying to work already with students on different art projects. And since I'm teaching for 8 years already, I created a new group of young artists who are quite active now. And I would say it's a third generation of contemporary artists which appeared now, because from each year I'm choosing some artists who are interested to go on this direction, and I'm trying to promote them.
we slowly enter the discussion phase, but I wouldn't like to. I would like to include also Bermet. Maybe Bermet would like to share either a challenge or an opportunity that you see in your local context, either in writing about art history or teaching art history.
Yeah, thank you. It's a very interesting discussion and exchanging. I'm not like academic art historian, but this year we started with my colleagues in Bishkek School of Contemporary Art, and it was like more. It starts from theory of art history, like 21st century, and then we moved to the history of Central Asian contemporary art. So it's quite a unique course that we just made by ourselves, because we were students also like 11 years ago of this School of Contemporary Art artists. And now for next year, I hope we will make methodological course. It will be not like art history, but also it's like multidisciplinary research platform where we'll be make some kind of learning, teaching of methodology. Our history can be one of the part. So it will be quite diverse program. And I just always thinking how it's like actually possible, because I'm like a political scientist and I'm not so much know about art history, just only what I had and I have read. But we had a course of student with a new student who really doesn't know anything about contemporary art, and now they're starting to make some kind of also works and maybe their researches. And yeah, but it's a quite vulnerable situation. I see we don't have any institutions in Kyrgyzstan working, like, I mean, governmental, working directly with contemporary art. And yeah, for me, next step, it will be facultative or course on just normal university about art history of contemporary art, and especially Central Asia, because yes, as I saw in questions, it's very important what actually art history we have, who teach, and about what region it is. So because in Kyrgyzstan we have really bright history already and of contemporary art, and actually no one knows about this inside and maybe outside. So it's, and we established this Bishkek School of Contemporary Art to make a platform where we can some kind decentralize these knowledges, and we have in future plans to make research about this. And no, so it's and I also like our horizontal structure. So we have near like team now together with students. We have near 10 people in working group. So, and it's quite easy to make schedule for 1 year. So it's like even one make a cool like circle of events for 1 month. So it means that you have 1 year full program, and we have open lectures and open events like every week. So it's very dynamic platform. So, and yeah, we don't have a concrete purpose, but we see the necessity of such platform because we like have a vacuum. And yeah, just I don't know what else I can say, but just say what that you can feel free to join us anytime.
It's great to hear Bermet, because in her case, we speak of basically self-organized, self-teaching as a methodology and as an opportunity in the field of contemporary art. And if compared to institutional ways of teaching contemporary art.
Yeah, and we don't have any budgets and nothing, so it's almost fully like only for meetings. We even do not pretend, but I like all our lectures so that it's not like super obligatory. So we really try to have very nice content. For example, now I have a series of talks with an artist from Chicago, and Edu-Art also was in our program. But we have also some lectures about internal life, like, for example, about architecture, or it will be about contemporary music. So I like that we also can attract some other disciplines to be presented at our platform. And also, of course, about museums and about art history, about methodology, education. So it's a quite flexible platform, and that's why I really like it, because we don't have so big, so wide community in Kyrgyzstan also.
So if any of you would like to comment on each other's, I think some of you expressed different ideas. I saw a lot of concerns in Tatiana's talk. If you, Jorg, you would like to give a feedback, or Cristina.
Yeah, I noticed some. Okay.
Please go ahead.
Oh, okay. I noticed some differences when in our systems when Tatiana was talking, because we are teaching post-structuralist theory. Actually, I'm teaching in the second year of BA, not in masters. But I'm also teaching aesthetics, theories of art interpretation, visual studies, curatorial studies, and my methodology of research is informed by critical theory in its extended meaning of this term, that could favor a transgressive methodology, given that it provides a wide instrumentary of research that connects different theory, which is relevant in the field of art interpretation, as semiotics, feminism, Marxism, psychoanalysis, or I don't know, post-colonial studies, post-political studies. Now, in relation to your presentation, I think that in our methodology of teaching, we can explore new methodologies of our interpretation that operates transgressively by appropriating different concepts from other disciplines. When we have this intention of maybe understanding the work of art in its entire context, in its political, social, and historical and cultural context. Yeah, and I also wanted to ask Jorg, maybe, how is he applying the concept of transversality when teaching art history? Because during your presentation, I was thinking of Félix Guattari and the three ecologies, in which it is described this three system of transversal relation, the personal, psychological, the social, interpersonal, and the social ecological system. And all of this system are insisting on this idea that the production of space is enriched with personal signification, in the sense that the individual experience is considered relevant for any social political institution, given the fact that the individual can be used as a tool, as an instrument of through which power is disseminated. And in connection to this, I was also maybe thinking of the concept of reason, the Deleuzian concept, that maybe in a further analogy we can talk about Nicolas Bourriot and the concept of the radicant. What do you think? Do you use this or not? Because I'm teaching critical theories for art interpretation. This is very useful for me, the concept of transversality.
So basically, when it comes to my teaching, I try to differentiate between bachelor and master's level. So when it comes to bachelor's level, I use this transgressive approach in a very pragmatic and in a very down-to-earth sense. So not so much theory-laden, but I really try to show the students that when you start here, then in the next step we will go there, and from this we will try to reach another plateau, and we try to reach another plateau, and we have so and so much time to do this. So obviously we will not reach the 1000 plateau, the thousand plateaus, speaking with Deleuze and Guattari. So when it comes to BA students, it's really a basic, very basic and pragmatic thing. When it comes to MFA students, then it changes. Then it becomes more concrete, and we do more reading, and we do more close reading, and we dive deeper into theory as theory, I would call it. I think at art institutions and the art context, we have the freedom to play with theory. So it is not our job to do it in a university style, but we can treat theory as material. That is something that I stress a lot. And that is also something that is of relevance in maybe answering Tatiana's question, that is of relevance for 21st century philosophy. Because at the moment you have this great monumentum when it comes to speculative realism, when it comes to object-oriented ontologies. So all these approaches to move beyond the post-structuralist and the postmodern and the post everything philosophies. So you can read like Graham or Meyasu and stuff like this, who are really material thinkers. And that is something that for me is quite crucial at the art institution or in the art context, not try to reproduce the discourses that the normal universities have, but to really create our own spaces and ways of thinking. They can be much more experimental and much more freewheeling and much more unorthodox than at the regular university studies. So that is also something that kind of like fits to this transgressive paradigm, that you start at a theory text, but then the text becomes a metaphor, the metaphor becomes material, the material becomes an artwork. So I really try to show students that when we speak of theory and we do theory, it's not an isolated field. So I try to portray this in my lecture, that it's a network and it's about movement and it's about moving from one plateau to the other plateau. So it's not about being forced to learn art history, but it's about understanding that art history is a reference point and it's a point of inspiration. It's a field where you can plant seeds. It's a field where you can harvest something. So when students come to our university, they very often have this very traditional understanding of theory. We have to learn something and we have to write something and we have to reproduce something. You have to do this as well to some extent, but it's the art context, so you have to try to make it productive and to also turn it upside down, go against the grain of it after you've understood it, obviously. I found, as a further remark, I found it quite interesting to hear from you, and I've heard that before quite a lot, that in the context of Chisinau or Moldova, There's this lack of discourse and of contemporary thought and of critical theory, critical thinking. At our university, in the last like 20 years, there was this rise of critical theory and rise of critical thinking, and there was a plethora of sociological discourses, philosophical discourses, ecology, etc., etc. So in our department, in the fine arts department, the former head of department really tried to make it a place where all these contemporary discourses somehow have a relevance and are being heard and are being dealt with. But in the last years, there was rather a contrary movement, I would say. So actually, the critical thinking and critical theory is in decline, and now it's much more about applied theory in the context of the creative industries and the art system. So it has become more pragmatic. It is more about art handling or applied social art practice, and also, again, more about traditional art history, and also about a canon of important artists and stuff like this. So in a way, I'm not meaning this, I'm not referring to this as judgmental. It's becoming a bit more conservative. Yeah? So more traditional understanding of theory as something that is useful and that you can apply in certain contexts, and that is helpful for a career in the arts and in the industries. So that I find an interesting moment to observe. You're trying to push it, yeah, and you're trying to make it grow. And at our university, people, at least like the principal and maybe the heads of the departments, they got a little bit tired of it. It's like complicating stuff. It's like just causing problems, and it's too much. And practical skills are needed now to survive in this harsh economic environment and stuff like this. So that is, for me, it's always quite interesting to observe. But I'm still very much interested. Isn't there something really like specific or peculiar about the context of Chișinău in terms of theory and discourse production? Is it really like this, that just the old stuff is being reproduced all the time? Or is there also something new emerging, or something old that can be revitalized and then that can be made productive? Because sometimes I have the feeling we're only talking about, there's like this English-speaking art world with like the latest discourses, and then there is some backward stuff that has been around for decades or centuries. But is there something in between? This is something that I would be interested in to hear from you.
I think Lilia, it's the right person to answer.
Okay.
Maybe each of us could answer to this question. Like, what do you see as an opportunity in the local art history context, like a topic or a movement or an artistic phenomenon which you would like to research more and dedicate more time and to kind of go deeper into it?
Okay, I can start a bit to talk about that. In fact, the contemporary art here, this Western format, I would say, this Western structure was implemented here, starting with the appearance of Soros Center of Contemporary Art. And so the art, the contemporary art was somehow appropriated. And we need several years to realize this moment, because it was a big lack on theory, but practically, even from the first exhibitions, you could see many appropriated works of Western contemporary artists. And our starting point was I was an artist and worked with my colleague. So we initiated a project of appropriation, invited other artists to appropriate the works of artists from 20th century, and somehow to that it would serve for them as a starting point to go further and to develop, to rethink and develop our own contextualized contemporary art. And I went to the Academy of Science. I started to research on my PhD. It was 20 years ago. And at a certain moment, I realized that it's too early. So I started to investigate about contemporary art, but I was a pioneer of this kind of contemporary art. So it took more time, and I started to dig deeper till end of 70s, and I found different artistic groups and initiatives, not so many, oriented to or in connection with Russian art, with Moscovite conceptualism, and being in touch with these artists. So somehow I found a huge, okay, not a huge because we're a peripheral country, and anyway, so everything is quite latent here, I would say. But anyway, it was a very relevant connection. And somehow it opened my eyes that not the contemporary art didn't appear in 95, but much earlier. Only we had this kind of luck when the Union of Artists came back, started to dominate again this the field of arts. And then the exact center, the Center of Contemporary Art, seminalized this appearance of new format, new standard of art. Yeah, so I would say even being peripheral, we had now maybe we have to reflect on this appropriated format of Western art, because we have already 3 generations of young of artists practicing contemporary art. As well, these influences of Russian art, also this how Marat Gelman called this South, the wave from South, and he brought to Moscow many relevant artists, and the second generation of conceptualist artists, they came mostly from Odessa. So we are in this context, and maybe we can, reflecting on that, we can generate something more specific, locally specific for the future. But at this moment, we have to rethink what we had and what we appropriated, and what we can propose.
Thank you. Thank you.
Cristina or Tatiana, would you like to point to some artistic phenomenon you are really fond of in your context?
Okay, so I think
Question for me or for Tatiana?
It It can also be for you.
It was for me?
It can also be for you. It's fine. If you would like to comment on if you have been in the very beginning, the question was if you see what kind of opportunity do you see for theoretizing or developing theoretical discourse around which kind of artistic phenomenon, local phenomenon, would you see an opportunity? Maybe a period, maybe even an artist which you think is valuable.
I think it's important to think about speaking about how change art during the last 20 years. And it's important because, as Lilia said, she started to make art research in the field of contemporary art. But till now, we haven't any publication or some theoretical papers about contemporary art. So we have some empty space, and we can't to understand what we have. And it's quite problematic that contemporary art exists. Yes, and there are some artists who make contemporary art, but there are no any paper and any concrete deep publication about how the Moldavian contemporary art to develop from 90s till nowadays. And for me, I think it's main point to understanding, to go further, to understand what it was in past and continues.
So if I understand right, Tatiana pointed out to a challenge that we don't have so many researchers or institutions or programs which would create enough time and space for a research to happen on this in this domain. I think it's one of the key questions also for our discussion today, like what kind of conditions do we have to write about our local art history? Like what kind of opportunities in that sense do we have? Since a general, just looking around, in general, we see that art history is being written somewhere else, also about our countries. And it's not a question that we don't want to do it, but maybe there is not so many opportunities to do it. And it could be economical opportunities or other, I don't know, structural things which have first to be solved before a proper art history, local art history is being written locally. And maybe it's a question to you, Jorg, in case you would write about Polish art, how do you position yourself in that kind of situation as a researcher, as a citizen of Poland, as an artist, as a curator, as a researcher who used to live in Poland or have friends from Poland? Like what kind of relation do you build when writing about art history of another place?
Well, that's a big question. When it comes to Poland and Polish art history, I try to keep myself and my identity as distanced as possible, I would argue. It's different when I write about heavy metal music and bodybuilding and contemporary art, like from the regions that I spent so much time in. In Poland, I basically use this transgressive method. I will also speak about this tomorrow. So I try to position art from Poland or art in Poland in a wide framework and in a wide network, trying not to exoticize it, which is kind of tempting when you come from like Western Europe. You think, there was like this crazy stuff behind the Iron Curtain. Let's discover this. This must be quite unique. But when you look at it thoroughly, you will see that there have been many transfers between the regions, that there is actually a shared knowledge, although, as Piotr Piotrowski points out, there are great idiosyncrasies, great differences, what meant what in which context. So I try to take into account this simultaneity of differences and of similarities. So like when I went to Poland, when I went to archives in Warsaw or stuff like this, it was for me not so much about like who am I and where do I come from, but rather trying to take into account the whole network, how art in Poland developed, irrespective of who I am. So I try to not push it in the foreground. And I think very luckily it has become a normal thing, you know, like a German going to Poland, working there, lecturing there, doing some research, just like Poles go to Berlin, work in the archives there, or write theses about American artists or stuff like this. So I have the feeling that it's quite it's something that is already institutionalized to a great degree and extent. And maybe it's also, I mean, I speak the language, not really well. I'm not a great Polish speaker, but that changes a lot. For instance, when we did a research project on the Venice Biennial in Zurich, and we established scholarships for research on the Romanian pavilion and on the Hungarian pavilion, we actually gave the scholarships to researchers from Hungary and from Romania, because they knew the language and they had easier access to archives on the spot, and they were simply more familiar with the discourses and stuff like this. So yeah, that's it basically.
I think Diana wanted to comment also on the local artistic phenomenon. Would you like? Pardon, Cristina. Sorry.
Okay. I was looking for Diana. Okay, so I think the opportunity for us when writing about Romanian art history is determined by this post-colonial turn in art history, where the desire of the former Eastern European bloc to integrate on the international art scene of the West started to decrease, and restructuration of power trajectories was established, in which this dominance of a center towards which any marginal art scene had to adapt disappeared, and it was replaced with a network of power that began to be organized transnationally or cross-regionally. So with the construction of the center as a monolithical power, all this meta-narration that function as a canon in an art history that was vertical and hierarchical disappeared. And I think we can take advantage of this by materializing other alternative structure, which maybe can be more subversive and active, and this could favor our local art practice in Romania, but also art historians that are writing about Romanian art history.
So we sort of went over 9 o'clock in Chisinau. I wouldn't like to keep you more, but if any of you would like to just comment or before I do the last announcement for tomorrow, please do so. Maybe Bermet, you would like to add something on the Central Asia and why you feel the need to research more into Central Asian art?
I think it's quite obvious because it's really like a gap in a worldwide art history. So, and now I think we have opportunity to make like very like high quality research. Not like we are students, but we already publishing everywhere article researches, so it's something that we can do. And I think it's also making archive, because actually it will be just forgotten, I don't know. So for me it's yeah, and it's super interesting, I don't know. So that's why I think we want to continue to work with this region.
But what will it change if there is an archive on Central Asian art? Like what you see, what kind of...
It's will be more visible, like for internal and external, like understanding. I don't know. It's when you. But I like also that we do not make an archive as a like stable, like something. It's super dynamic. So we are in process of discussion, and discussion comes like new understanding. I don't know. It's sounds super common, but but I mean this there is no any like nothing, no any institutions or etc. Contemporary Art Museum, Center for Contemporary Art, and maybe in capital it's some kind work, but outside the capital it's also nothing, even not in contemporary art, but in general in culture.
Bermet, but I know you had Stab quite long time. I don't remember 5, 6 old it was. And now how it's developed?
It's ruined.
What?
It's ruined.
Okay.
They even didn't save websites. I mean, I have a lot of questions to the organizers of Stab now, and I already asked them because they have to, at least they can save the website, because it was a lot of, it's like 100,000 euro invested to this project, actually, and we had a lot of researches during several years, and now the login, like website, it just, they didn't pay for website, and it's now not working. So
wow, it's quite
bad. Yeah, it's super sad. But
in Stab, and was for me was so surprised that this Stab hasn't a good relation with artists and artistic environment, and for me was questions how they work, you know, and work together with artists, and now it's closed, and it's quite strange situation.
Yeah, because like thought that they are the, I don't know, the most intellectual people in Central Asia. So, and it's problematic work with such people. I mean, of course, they have a lot of nice projects, but and of course they try to work with like left ideologies, but for me it was super abstract. Now I also work with the workers and try to like, I don't know, really speak about labor rights in my work and all my activities, and really affected to real politics. So I think that was some kind of profanation, I don't know. it was super good materials, but under this, it was also super vertical structure. I mean, there were only curator who decide everything. And I really like that we work with a group. And for us, it's like who do something, who they decide. Because you cannot say someone do this and do not do this. If people work, they just work, and if you don't like, do your stuff.
So maybe on this note of let's work hard to achieve what we want. Let's finish this session. I'm really grateful to all of you for your time and the willingness to answer the questions and to help each other. And we also invite you tomorrow to join the presentation of Jorg called Eastern Europeanizing Globalization, Polish Art around 1900 as a case study of today. Jorg, I would let you just in two words say what it will be about. I wouldn't read the synopsis on the website. Anyway, it's tomorrow from 5 to 6:30, so everyone is invited to join, and maybe we can continue discussing some issues that we didn't talk entirely today tomorrow.